morning to you. Right, so the climate summit has dominated news an awful lot, certainly the broadcasters for the last 2 weeks after they sent so many people up. I think it's hundreds of people the BBC have sent up to cover the climate summit. We're told it was his last-ditch attempt to save the planet, which is weird because there's a COP27 booked for Egypt next year. So clearly they thought there was something more to talk about. We had a load of announcements early on deforestation, methane gas and the like. But China's not there. Russia's not there. The Indians have said basically pay us $1 trillion or we're not going to go for your targets. We're going to go for 2070. And who are we kidding? Whether they'll even be aiming for that. Paris Agreement wasn't binding, didn't really achieve very much. Is it likely there's going to be anything achieved by COP26 in Glasgow?
Honestly, Julia, I don't know. I think there'll probably be some incremental progress, but I must be honest with you, it's hard to be hopeful at this point. We have a couple more days to go and things could change at that point. But so far, I would say that what's happened at the summit has been a failure by our leaders of everyone, you, me, all your listeners and everyone else around the world. The gap between the emissions cuts that have been promised at COP26 and what's needed over the next decade, which is so crucial to avoid catastrophic warming, is yawning. And that means more terrible floods, more deadly heat waves, more famines. Your second story today was about people trying to cross the channel. It means more climate refugees, more insecurity for everyone.
So sorry.
And that can't be put back in the box.
Max, those people aren't climate refugees.
I'm not saying that they are specifically climate refugees, Julia, but what I am saying is that in the future, if sub-Saharan Africa is falling apart because there are more famines, more heat waves and more disease, then of course we're going to see more people trying to get to safety. And look, no one, I don't think, wants to see any more of the things that I've just described. So that's why it's so important for all of us that there is a positive outcome.
Well, wait a second, but you say that
I don't feel the heat now.
I don't want to see anything more of that. But what I'd also think would help solve that problem, certainly the migration problem, would be actually and also people dying from famine or dying from disease or from heat, would be actually if those countries were able to modernise and develop their economies, industrialise and use fuels. Yes, wouldn't it be wonderful if they could do that all on solar and wind? They can't. Letting them use the fossil fuels that will actually enable their countries to move forward. We know that
that's what they're doing now, Gillian. But they're currently developing,
but they're not developing fast enough because they're being told off by the West for doing it.
Not at all. I mean, we're not asking poor countries currently to stop using fossil fuels because they don't contribute enormous amounts to global emissions. So what the poor countries want at COP26 in order to sign up to a broad agreement that all 196 countries agree on is quite reasonable, is to say, look, if we're going to develop in a way that reduces carbon, doesn't increase carbon, we'd like some assistance to do so. And also, by the way, we'd like some compensation for the climate effects that are already baked in at this point. We have over a degree of warming, and we're starting to see the impact of that. And those least responsible, most vulnerable, I think are entitled to ask for some compensation. That's why the finance package at COP26 is such a key part of this, and it's one of the key parts that's currently missing.
But exactly. This promise of 100 billion a year, it doesn't touch the sides of this. And India's talked about, Modi is saying $1 trillion, thank you very much. He's actually pricing it in at a rather more reasonable cost of what it would cost his country. This is the issue, though. I mean, I do apologise. The new version of the COP26 draft agreement is published just in the last few moments. It contains a reference to fossil fuels, despite a campaign from major coal, oil and gas producers to have that removed. Basically, the current draft calls for the acceleration of the phase-out of unabated coal power and of inefficient subsidies for fossil fuels. The earlier draft didn't include the word inefficient. Now, a lot of this, even like the announcement of the US-China agreement yesterday, a lot of this is just words. It doesn't mean anything. Lots of the countries who promise these things have no intention whatsoever of going ahead with them. When we have things like promises on deforestation, a lot of these are by countries which weren't deforesting anyway, were already changing their policy. When a country like Britain says we're going to phase out coal, well, we kind of almost already have. A lot of this is stuff just sort of, it looks good, makes a lovely headline in the papers, and everyone says, oh, well done, well done. But actually it's stuff that was happening anyway naturally. Is there anything going to actually be achieved that's going to be meaningful other than people saying something that makes them sort of look good on the stage and then going away and carrying on as they were anyway?
The next 2 days will ultimately tell us that.
2 days? Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. It's supposed to end today.
I know, but
I
they
was hoping
always
I
run
could
on,
switch
Julie.
on the telly tomorrow and not be
I'm
facing
sorry.
climate propaganda.
I'm afraid you might be disappointed. They tend to run on by a day or two, so we've probably got the weekend to run, and ultimately that's when we're going to find out. And I think the most important thing, given that at this stage in COP26 we are unlikely to see certainly a strengthening of the kind of language you just read out there on fossil fuels, which is ultimately the key problem here, is a commitment to come back not just every 5 years now, but every year with an expectation that targets and ambition will be raised. Because we really are in last chance saloon here. This
Here we go.
decade, if we don't get this right, we're in trouble.
And
We're in real trouble.
now I hear this all the time.
And
We're in trouble. Last chance saloon. What's going to happen in a decade's time?
I've already so the long-term impacts of reaching 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, or God forbid, any higher than that,
God forbid,
are those that we've already covered. So we're going to see more extreme weather. We're going to see more famines. We're going to see more disease. We are going to see basically, as a global level, permanent insecurity for centuries to come. That is nothing that
we should all
wants.
just probably end it now, shouldn't we?
No, the thing is that we have all the tools available to us to avoid that outcome, but we have to use them in the next decade. Timing is...
You say all the tools. Those tools don't ever appear to include some of the cleaner fuels we've got, like nuclear, like cleaner shale gas that's easily available.
Nuclear. It could include nuclear.
Lots of the people at COP don't want it to be nuclear. A lot of the climate activists don't want it to be nuclear.
It's quite expensive because it's expensive, Julia. And I know one of your key interests is the cost of this, and nuclear has not dropped in price for the 40 or 50 years that it's been running. By contrast, wind and solar have fallen in price dramatically over the last decade, as has electric storage. So just purely on a cost basis,
Max,
we're very likely to see
wind and solar are massively subsidised by the taxpayer. They're not reliable. If you have wind and solar, you have to have other kind of energy to back that up, whatever it is, and that's going to be not as clean.
Batteries.
And well, you say batteries. We don't have enough battery power in this country. I think if we had all the battery power, 38 minutes, we'd have 38 minutes worth of battery power. Most of the lithium in this world has been bought up by China. Lithium costs are going up this month by 20% alone. It would cost trillions and trillions of pounds for us to have enough batteries.
Has quadrupled. The cost of gas has quadrupled. Look, we can have short-term price movements, but look, the direction of travel is absolutely clear. Wind, solar, and storage have been getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper over the last 10 years, and they will continue to do so.
They may well, Max, in the long term, that would be wonderful. The reality is right now, there is no country in the world that has enough battery storage to rely solely on wind, on wind and solar.
Indeed. That's of course why we need to build some more. Look, we're not saying that we fix this tomorrow. We're not even saying that we fix this by 2030. We're just saying that we are on track to fix it by 2030, because if we're not on track by then, we won't be able to get back on track, and that is the big risk, and that ultimately is the problem that COP26 is.
And how much do you think this is going to cost my listeners?
Your listeners? Oh, I mean, look, we've talked about this before, Julia. In the UK, we know that this is going to be affordable. The Labour government, the Labour Party in the opposition is saying if it were in government, it would be spending £25 billion a year on climate. That's 4 times what the Conservative government is currently planning to spend. That's 5 times less than what we spend on the NHS every year. These are, sure, they sound like big numbers.
No, they don't. That doesn't sound like a big number to me.
They're entirely proportional to the scale of the challenge. And the point is that it gets cheaper. Once you start doing it, once you start investing in these technologies, they just keep getting cheaper. All the evidence shows that. And so if we commit to this, we put ourselves on track for a lower cost future that is stable, clean, secure, and offers us a chance of prosperity. If we don't, we are just rolling the dice. Now, who wants to do that?
It depends when you're not concerned about the outcome either way. But there we are. Max Wakefield, you put a very strong argument. I really appreciate you joining us.